Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Where do I put my hands? Thank you.
Thank you. Today I have a very special guest with me, George here. George, thank you so much for helping me do this whole production, to support me in every capacity that you have. And yeah, I would just like to start by saying that I was personally so inspired when I met you. We just sort of bumped into each other, and that's how I got into a conversation. And the kind of support that Genesis has showed me, I'm so grateful. And that's initially what inspired me to bring you on the show and talk to you. And yeah, around that, I just wanted to ask you that what was it that made you keen or even agree to do something like that? Because I would have never imagined that you'd say yes. So for me, that was I was like, okay.
Well, I mean, firstly, thank you for inviting me to
Of course.
be on your podcast. I mean, to be honest, there are two types of creatives, actually three types of creatives I believe in, right? There are the ones that believe in their end vision, which is their goal, their creative ambition in this direction, right? And they create stuff like yourself. And the second type of creative, I'd say, is the person that, or entity that creates the platform for those individuals, right?
Yeah.
You say what you will, but whoever built YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, they are creatives. It took a lot of creative power to put those together. And then there are those crazy ones. I feel like I fit in the third one, which is I try to do both.
Yeah.
Right. So I have a lot of, I guess, insight or empathy into those who want to create those things for themselves.
Right.
And I also had the urge to build the platform for those people, mainly because I myself have so many different interests. And when I see people doing something in those spaces, I get excited myself.
Yeah.
And I kind of know how to put the platform together. And I also kind of like I said, I feel like energized by other people creating stuff. So when you're like, can you come onto my podcast? And can you speak a little bit about your journey and, and maybe the rules that you've broken, which is the theme of your thing, by the rules. Then I'm more than happy to talk about those things.
Yeah, and that for me is so inspiring in itself, because I remember when we were first speaking, and then, I think the first point of interest that piqued me was that, okay, interesting, because this person, he's also been like a multi-creative person. He's done a bit of this and this and this. And personally, for me, that was, for the longest time, I struggled with that a bit, because, in a way, society expects you to have a niche that, okay, there's only one thing that you can be good at. With regards to that, maybe can you just tell anybody who's listening to this, seeing this, what was your journey like?
Hello.
Hello.
Well, I'd start off as thinking, when I was at school, I firmly just wanted to stick to the things I was just good at, right? Which actually did not allow me to explore a lot more. And, I was very much a sports person. Right? And a lot of my mindset actually comes from that world of movement and sports and competitiveness. And that's where I wasn't afraid to try anything. Name a sport, I probably did it. Right?
Javelin.
Javelin. I have a school world record in the javelin. Yeah.
That was so random.
Very random. 14 years old, I threw 50 meters.
Wow.
Like half a football field, I guess. Ridiculous.
Wow.
The other kids suspected me of being on steroids, but at a 14-year-old, you're not on steroids, obviously.
Wow,
it's called leverage. So, but I had lots of different options from my school, and I was able to go into many different things. That excited me.
Yeah.
But if you talked about subject matter across, all academia, I was not really super interested. But after maybe at the end of high school, I started realizing I can't just lean on sports for my life. What, my muscles are being used, but how about the thing between my ears? What else can I do that excites me? And I was getting very much into art, and I was skipping a lot of my language classes to go do art. And fortunately, my art teacher was very supportive of this. He gave me my own private room to create art in, which nobody had access to.
Amazing.
Not so great because I was literally skipping other classes and just hanging out in there making stuff.
Okay.
But that's where I started tapping into, just through art itself, these really interesting subjects of psychology, music, and just that was, I guess, the gate that allowed me to go, oh, wait a minute, there's a whole world out there, right? And as I started creating more and more, I started picking up other interests in video and music. And at the end of high school, I had to decide what I wanted to be, and I went in the direction of starting to become an architect. So I studied architecture for 3 years and got my degree.
Right.
And I think this is after like a lot of post-analysis of what I went through.
No, of course, yeah.
But I realized that I picked architecture because of this newfound love for like everything, just starting to look at life differently. And I feel like architecture is one of those professions that forces you to understand the lives of others.
Okay. That's interesting.
Because you have to build for them. And if you don't understand them, you're not building something for them in the right sense. Right? For example, imagine you had to build a house for a skateboarder. And you knew nothing about skateboarding. Right? You wouldn't be very crazy and bold with their design. You'd be like, all right, just put a couple baths in there, a bedroom, a living room.
Yeah.
But, look at Tony Hawk's house. He's probably got a half pipe built into his kitchen, Like, what are the possibilities that you can come up with? So really, that was teaching me, like, how do you design for someone for a specific niche, right? And I feel like that perspective on the world kind of helped me understand, oh, actually, you can pick up a lot of different tools and mindsets, and you don't have to just do one thing, right? So, but it was a struggle because the thing that I guess you were talking about was people choose one path and they may still be unhappy, but you could also be multifaceted and still be quite unhappy, which I was struggling. I'm not anything,
Yeah.
You try to press me like, what exactly do you do?
Yeah.
I have to default to what the piece of paper I got at university would be.
I'm an architect.
Exactly.
On paper.
But I've made countless videos, music.
Yeah.
So how do you navigate that minefield of identity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it sort of makes me wonder that, like there's no right or wrong and there's no one way or the other, because like for somebody, they could be an architect and the best architect that the world has seen for, the entire lives. Yeah. But at the same time, they could be having the same sort of struggles that somebody like you and me, we've shared this common experience that, I know I'm good at this, and this, but I'm still not, you're not feeling it of sorts. And then, and you spoke about the challenges that, you faced even during that phase when you were doing a bunch of different things. So can you paint me a picture around that? Like, what did that look like in terms of, was that more internal or was it also like, with friends, family? Was it?
I guess part of the journey has always been trying to figure out who am I pleasing?
Right.
Who am I creating for?
Right.
And there is always in nearly everybody ingrained the idea you're pleasing your parents.
Okay.
Right? And there was a direction, and I can still hear my mom and my dad's voices going through my mind.
This is going into
make your bed, clean your no. It's more like I could hear them saying like, art is not a profession. It's not sustainable, which is not true, right? Yeah. But for them, they led more like legacy traditional lives. But as I got to know them more, my mom was a piano teacher while keeping my dad, keeping the whole family afloat while my dad started a new business. Right. Is that sustainable? Being a piano teacher? No, not really. But it's an art form and it sustained a family. So, I feel like who are you pleasing? That's the thing I was kind of getting to, and the journey of learning that. Okay, what are you doing for yourself?
Absolutely.
Became more and more clear for me.
Yeah.
And the thing that I started, I guess the thing that I started to realize was, you're gonna have imposter syndrome in any place. So the reality is, you just have to choose which subject you want to be an imposter in, and then work on it.
That makes so much sense,
right? It's so profound to think about it that way, because it's inevitable. Everybody's going to go through that feeling. I mean, sure. Name one thing you felt an imposter in recently.
Even this, like, I have no sort of credibility or like technical skills, so to speak. Everything is self-learned and all of that.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, am I?
Exactly. Those questions creep in.
Yeah. But like, it's so interesting because even my former business partner, we had this profound discussion around, even at that age of 60, you've had a career which is so long, which is so fulfilling in the traditional sense of successful. Even a person like that at that stature will experience it at some level. Yeah. So I think it's more around accepting it and working with what you've got. So
exactly.
Coming back, what you were saying, sorry.
No, I mean, the imposter syndrome will affect anybody at any age, and will strike at the most inconvenient moments, probably, right? You're like, 3, 2, 1, go live. And you're like, what am I doing? It gets a little bit intense.
Yeah, it does.
But I think this is where it kind of ties back into my days of sports.
Okay.
And I still have a teacher who, well, he's not my teacher anymore, but I feel like I owe him quite a lot, which is just one very small bit of mindset, which was this tunnel vision concept, which, it's common, it's simple. But the story behind that was, like, I was at a athletics meet.
Okay.
And I was a bit of a freak, and I was doing multiple different things. I'd go from a hurdles and then just walk over to the javelin, do the javelin, then go do the shot put, and then the high jump. And after a big round of doing things, I had to do the 800 meters.
Right.
Now, the 800 meters run these days, it's not a jog. It's like a sprint.
Yeah.
And everybody's just getting so good at it. Yeah. And I had a freak out. And I remembered, like, wanting to throw up just on this, like, from the anxiety of having to do, I can't do this. I'm not a runner. Like, which is not true. I trained for running. But in that moment, you go, I can't do this. And my teacher pulled me aside and was like, this is a circle. All you need to do is focus on the 2 or 3 steps in front of you. Yeah. Don't even look at the people left or right of you. If someone's in front of you, follow them. And then when you got your chance, or when you have the ability built up inside of you to take over, do it. Right? What feels right for you? And I've always taken that analogy. To finish the story, I won that race. So I went from freaking out, wanting to throw up, and won the race.
Amazing.
It's like stupid. Yeah. And but that lesson has always stuck with me. It's like, focus on the 2 or 3 steps in front of you, and when it feels right, take over. Yeah. And figure out what's going on. But yeah, that mindset's always stuck with me. It drives everything I do now, and it also encourages me not to focus on other people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right, which is, I think, a lot of the imposter syndrome stuff comes from looking outside and realizing, that person's similar to what I'm. That person's doing similar things to what I want to do. Should I be doing it that way? No. Like, you can do the podcast however you like.
Exactly.
You don't have to have this background or the background that you saw on some YouTube channel.
Absolutely.
You make your own.
Yeah.
Right? You can set any parameter for yourself. Right? And like you said, there's no right or wrong. Yeah. That's the important part. So.
I think that's the part that, people tend to sort of even forget, because we're so focused on looking outside. And then there was also this part, like just yesterday, I was having a call with my producers, and, they were like, okay, what's the scene behind monetizing this and all of that? And I was like, in all honesty, that's not what I thought about when I was doing this. And I'm not saying this is right. I'm not saying this is wrong. But for me, the entire narrative changes
Yeah.
if I start, looking at it like that, because then I'm trying to please somebody else. And in this case, it also becomes you to a certain extent. And
Yeah.
there was a sort of difficult conversation. And I was like, if you're in it for that, like in not direct words, but I was like, hey, this is something that I've put my heart and soul into. And I don't know, there are these rules that I'm absolutely going against. And this feels right to me. And, what I'm trying to say is that at some point we do come to a point where you're doing things for yourself and you just stop worrying about whatever is outside of you, and it's more of an inward journey. So with regards to that, what was your journey like to get to that stage? Because like what I see around you, and even the passion with which you talk about what you're doing and what you have been doing, I'm sure it has been a journey, right? And so what was the, like, what did it lead to? How was Genesis geneticized in? So tell us that story.
Well, I guess it started with, I was coming up to the end of my second year as being a junior architect working here in Bali. And I was 22 and I had a great future ahead of me. Right? I was working for like literally the best architect in Bali, this local guy called Popo Danis. Great, amazing designer, great leader. But I was sitting next to my senior of nearly 10 years. And we were working on the same project. Sure, I was given a slightly smaller section of the project, but we were on the same project.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I started to chart out my future very quickly. I was like, I'm going to be in that chair in 10 years with maybe a bit more money in my pocket, but do I want to be there? And I started thinking about the things that make me happy, the things that make me excited. And there was something about that thought that made me kind of want to reconsider where I was going. And it actually made me think like, oh, how many other people are feeling this dissatisfaction from a standard like cookie cutter job, I guess. Like good job. But how many people are feeling this like loss of creativity, right? And so I basically just wrote down all the things that I was creatively interested in. And I quickly realized that, oh, the last time we had access to a platform, an institution that had these creative outlets was university or school. And as adults, there's no playground for creativity, right? You got to do it on your own spare time, and you're at home and slowly save up for equipment and have access to these.
To play.
Yeah, exactly. And so I wrote this idea down, and I was like, okay, let me design something around this. So I'd go home, I'd write some kind of business plan. Literally Googled how to make a business plan. I had no idea. And slowly realized that, okay, I can piece something together. Showed my parents. My parents said, okay, well, if you want to do this, you have to work for our company, my mom and dad's company first. Prove that I can do all of these different areas of business. Look at sales, look at accounting, look at how do I deal with staff. And then from there I started building this place, which once again had no rule book. I literally, what I realize now as being an entrepreneur is learning how to identify the fires, because there's multiple going on at the same time, prioritizing which one needs to be put out first, and then put it out in particular order. That's how you move forward. I guess you could say the world is on fire and you're the firefighter and you're just putting bits out at a time, right? And so soon you have this radius around you of something that you can see and that is within your control. So it's been pretty tough.
I'm sure.
But yeah, I'm a very optimistic person.
I see that.
And that means that even if I fail, I still see it as I give myself one day to be angry about it,
and then
I have to get back to it. It's a completely waste of time to be able to dwell on anything.
Absolutely,
right?
100% agree.
Yeah.
So there's something that's coming up for me, and with regards to that, do you think you're a numbers guy? Yes or no?
I don't think I'm a numbers guy.
Absolutely.
No, I'm a feeling person.
Yeah.
I go by my gut,
Yeah.
and then it has to work up towards my head.
That's exactly why I asked you this question, because so this has come up for me also a lot of times where and this was one of the first questions that I was going to ask you, but then like we're just winging it in the true sense that, so for me, whatever, in the way you've supported me, in the way Genesis has supported me, it almost feels like a social entrepreneurship. And and it feels very good, it feels fulfilling, because that's my idea of moving forward. And I remember I was telling you about this book that I picked up from your library, and like things that money can't buy. And it resonates at a deeper level, because at some point as a society, and this is a very personal thought, that like, okay, great, this is a commodity, this is a tender of exchange and all of that, but at what point do we go beyond that and start doing things that are still like profitable, that are still sustainable, and that are still sort of contributing to the kind of world you see and you imagine? So in that sense, do you think that that's an accurate reading, or that's not how you saw it, and that's not?
I've always wanted this place to be a helpful space.
Right.
And right from the beginning, I knew that two things can exist. You can help people and make money at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And there is a point where you have to understand and analyze, where is the balance, right? You can't, if you're giving everything out for free, for example, there's going to be a limit to your energy and resource.
Yeah.
And there's no use in a platform disappearing when, if there is a sustainable way of running things, that you can impact much more lives and many more projects.
Yeah.
And that's how I see the balance.
Yeah.
But definitely leading, I guess, to sound a bit cliche, it's like leading with your heart first. Is much more inviting and much more human, right? If you're met with the kind of the capitalist approach and tell me your budget and all of that, it can feel very inauthentic.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can start to understand people's projects, their outlook on life, and and understand how can we bring our platform and contribute to that, that's a better meeting point.
Yeah.
Because there's always, doesn't matter, you got X budget or 10X budget.
Yeah.
Something can be done in between that range, always. Yeah. And that's my optimistic side. Always thinking about anything can be done.
Yeah.
If you tell me you had this, then we find a way to make that happen.
Right.
There is no didn't fit the price list. It doesn't. It just, for me, it's so strange when people. I take this to another level. Is that so? If people are like, oh, I want to be this, and they think about all the hindrances in their lives, right? And sometimes it's a price list, right?
Yeah.
I got to buy this equipment. I have to buy this software. Maybe I have to get insurance for this or that. I don't think that it's not the right mindset. It's the one step at a time. What should I just do right now to inch my way closer to potentially getting that equipment, right? And there's always a way to do something that's creative or build towards the character that you have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So very interesting.
I mean, this coming out, for me, I don't regularly voice this.
Okay.
I have it in my head. I tell myself these things.
I'm so happy then with being able to do that, because I think it's kind of the same, and that's the whole central theme or the crux of this podcast, is things that go on here. I was just I'm just gonna fucking say it.
Yeah, okay. All right. I'm glad you swore, because I didn't know if we can fucking swear or not.
We can fucking swear. I think every episode has.
You're probably gonna beat me out.
No, but you get the point, right? So for me, I was it doesn't matter whether, because once I've said it, I don't know how it's gonna land.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing it with that intention. I'm, always there's this mindset, and which I think more and more, like, when I'm in this conversation with you, I was like intrigued, okay, that what would a conversation with this person look like or be like? Because there's so much to learn. There's so much, when we step into a room, we're already sort of, there's a first impression. And that in itself said so much about you to me. And, like, that's that whole, like, even the energy at, with everybody who's been helping and all, I'm like, okay, there's something to learn, there's something of value. And through a conversation, maybe we can reach that. And I think what's happening is that there's so much commonality, and I'm sure a lot of other people also think like that. A lot of young people my age. I don't know, how old are you?
I'm 33.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Why
I'm
did I have to
27.
think so hard? Maybe I'm older.
Maybe. So yeah, you get it. Like,
Yes,
my
yeah.
audience is of that age group, and a lot of times, we're in that conundrum that I do believe like this, but is this how the world works? And is this will this be good enough in the long run? So what do you have to say around that? And
I think, the first point that you touched on there is as soon as you kind of deliberately choose not to be fearful of a scenario and be more intrigued, you suddenly realize there's so many doors that you can open.
Yeah.
Because fear makes us blind, right?
Yeah.
And you have a choice to focus on that or to focus on something else.
Right.
And fear is a very, very, very strong emotion. But you're clearly the type of person who chooses not to go in the direction of fear. Fuck the rules. Right? Yeah, exactly. And you choose to be intrigued.
Yeah.
Or what if? It's the what if,
like,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
The what if question.
Yeah.
What if I spoke to this person?
Yeah.
What could I learn?
Yeah.
Right? What will they be like?
Yeah.
And the only scenario, if you wanted to go down the negative direction, it's like, what if they're an asshole? Well, who cares? Let's find out if they're an asshole or not.
Exactly.
Right? And it doesn't matter. You'll quickly find out, and you'll be like, all right, don't need to speak to that person. But if they are nice, damn, okay, then you can enjoy an interaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I always feel like being open to those, it's a level of openness that you have to have, and an acute awareness of when you're being fearful of something, right? It's not easy because the subconscious, and I'm no expert in the subconscious. Maybe my subconscious is an expert in all of that, but honestly, like we're tuned to keeping ourselves safe, right? But safe doesn't really mean all the other things that we want in life, which is like happy, creative, fulfilled. Safe just means your heart stays beating and your body isn't hurt.
Yep.
Right? But to get things that you want require a lot of work, pain, and sacrifice.
Huge amounts.
Exactly. And, just like you're pointing out, it's like, okay, I'm starting this project. I don't need to think about money. I don't want to think about money because that will get in the way of what I want to achieve.
Yep.
And what I want to achieve is just what's going to come out of me diving into the unknown.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's super important. And I feel like lately, social media has been an amazing platform. And it's been talked about, but it's also the cookie cutter. It creates a model for people to follow, and then that's it. And I feel a particular way about when I watch other people's videos. It feels like it's the same of someone else. But who am I to say that that's wrong because they've just done something creative?
Yep.
Right. So there's many different themes going on here, but I think my point is. Kind of saying screw you to fear, being open and being inquisitive. That's kind of what we've lost. We've lost this ability to be like, why? Ask why. And what if? Right? You're clearly experiencing that like through this project.
Yeah, of course. I mean, at various points, and then like I could speak from my perspective, but then like the other reason why initially it was supposed to be just me, and then people started showing interest, and me asking you happened just by chance. It was never a part of the plan. And then I was like, okay, great, I come with a certain perspective. And in many ways these are my innate qualities. I would say that the fearlessness, it's how I've been of sorts. And then I also realize, and I come with the awareness that not everybody would be like that. And, we're also talking to somebody who might be very fearful of taking those risks.
Yeah.
And, who might be in a position where they would want to, go beyond and might have the entire intention to. But like, it's the way I like to put it is that you're in your own way.
Yeah.
So, so just getting over that, and like for me, it's easy to say whatever I'm living and doing because it comes naturally to me. But like, for example, if there's somebody that you're speaking to, or in your experience, because like in my head, I have so many people for whom this same thing could be very challenging. And like, just to be very direct, it sort of looks easy the way I've done it in the last 20 days, but it hasn't been, and that has its own like challenge also. But for somebody, it could just be that, putting yourself out there. So what would you say to an audience like that? And what would you like?
Well, I think you saying you're being in your own way is a very, important thing to analyze, right? We are our own anchor, or we hold ourselves back, right? Even for myself, I have projects sitting in my mind that I'm holding myself back on.
Okay.
Whether I don't give what is that? I am building up a spaceship. No, I mean, there's my brother and I run we make a video series called Made in Bali.
What?
Yeah, and the video series is about documenting the old crafts and traditions of the Balinese people before they go extinct.
Okay.
Right? And there's a whole bunch of different things that are just slowly disappearing because people want to choose, jobs. No one wants to be a salt farmer or a mask carver or a, elite dancer in the Balinese community. There are, but it's diminishing. So we, took it upon ourselves to start filming these things. And we've done 2 episodes.
Okay.
And we're going to do the 3rd. But once again, I'm like caught in life, and we're not making the priority to do those things. Yeah. But if it's a message towards someone who's starting out to doing something, any project, right? This is your question, right? Like, how do you
stop coming in your own way?
Exactly. Yeah. I think there is the power of practice, but it's also that message I shared, I guess, of the 1 step or the 1 inch at a time, right? And it's the 1 step to you is actually, these are leaps and bounds, right? Because right now, thinking about things, you are static, right? Your baseline is no movement. So there is no failure, right? Whatever you fail at, you've learned and you've taken a step. And you literally can't go backwards.
Absolutely,
So once you stop and think about what is actually in your way, you actually find out that there's nothing stopping you, really nothing, because you can do that tiny little thing. Okay, for example, podcast. And if someone's like, oh, I've always wanted to have a podcast, I wanted to interview someone. You know what? Go outside, take your phone, sit down next to an old man or whatever, and start asking questions. Get comfortable with speaking to someone. If it's not an old man that's a stranger, go talk to your mom, ask about their life, right? Take that audio, edit it on your phone, airdrop it into your laptop. There's free software. GarageBand is free now, which, by the way, GarageBand is a more powerful software than the Beatles had used to make their own album. So
okay, I didn't know that.
It's free and it's more powerful than that. So you could do that. There's nothing really standing in your way.
Absolutely,
but look, we're sitting mentally standing. We are sitting in a studio, and we've had everything taken care of for us, right? The microphones were placed, the camera was sorted out, the lighting and the whole room. I realize from the business side of things, people want their hindrances taken care of.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm guessing you don't really want to learn the white balance, shutter speed, aperture,
Actually.
audio. Maybe you do.
Yeah.
But what it does is it slows down your project while you're here.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I want to hear, like, how does that fit? How does that work out in your plan? And what is your intrigue in that space?
Questioning the question.
Yeah, I'm allowed to do this, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So that's very interesting because and just in this conversation, what I realized is that even though it might look like I'm taking risks, I will only take risks that I'm comfortable with. And, and again, there are, not to sort of diminish what anybody is doing, not just me for that matter. So I have a good knowledge around, I have an education in this. So it's almost like, I might not know how to change that tire, but I can damn well convince you that I know how to do it.
Nice. Okay.
Because like I went to art school for 1 year, I dropped out. So I did study a lot about art and I've done courses in, photography, and I've worked in media production and all of that. So if I were given a camera, if I had to do it, I would definitely be able to do it. And that is where I have to sort of even let go of that control, because and that's the part that I've struggled with, that when that okay, I can also do this, then there's also that that perfectionism, that maybe I'll do this better than the other person would do it because they bring in their vision and I have my vision. So yeah, it's sort of like that. And tomorrow, like, I wouldn't be equally comfortable building a rocket, just or doing what a pilot does, or you like a corporate job also. I've tried it, but no, not my thing. I wouldn't try and be a VP or CXO or whatever. That's just not something I have fun in. But here, because I know that yes, if, for example, if all of this wasn't there and if this wasn't there, can I still do it? Yes, I can.
Nice.
And yet, for me, it's like, if I'm putting something out there, then might as well, in my own capacity, make it of a certain sort of standard, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Because I remember you were telling me about your teacher from whom you got that tunnel vision, sort of philosophy. So I have a similar story.
Tell me. I want to hear.
So there was this accounts teacher when I was in 11th grade, and I have no other memory of that because honestly, I was just like whiling away my time or whatever. But he said one thing that stuck through me, and I believe in that. It's like almost like a golden mantra to me, that he said something. I don't remember the before after, but what he said was, "Don't make mediocrity your standard."
Nice.
So that was so powerful, and I'm sure he said it in a totally different context than.
But that's what you heard.
Yeah, and I was like, this. And
nice.
so if I'm doing it, I'll do it. It'll definitely have my own touch in it. Like, you must have observed, I didn't do like a cliched intro, and I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna. I'm honestly just very thankful to whoever is listening to this, and that's all I say in most of my messages, because I don't want that. This also has a cookie cutter format.
Yeah.
Like I've worked.
It's your format.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
However you want it to be.
Yeah, and in the end, I think it's my story, and there's such a. For me, at least, there's a very beautiful reason why I'm doing this. So I think I should have 100% ownership around how I want to do it, what I want it to look like.
I agree.
And, and yeah, so does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah. On to my next question.
Of course, go ahead.
No, I think you touched on a really interesting point there. Yeah. And as my wife would tell me, as a Virgo, I focus on perfectionism. And as creatives, I feel like we suffer from these things a lot.
A lot.
And it's heavy. And the journey to A to B, if every day you complete 99%, you never get to B, right? It just doesn't work. So that has the journey of having to let go of certain things and allow them to be.
Just be,
is one of the strongest things, or the most difficult things to achieve throughout your life, probably, and mine and everybody's. But it's so important. I don't know. I struggle with it all the time. Like, how could it be better? How could my brain is always trying to figure out when you just need to say, looks great. Let's just move on.
Exactly.
And if we need to revise it later in the future, we can do so. Because inspiration will strike. And when you try to force it so much, it doesn't feel authentic. And it doesn't feel like it came naturally, you know. And some of my best ideas just come like literally, you know, the Greek used to believe that there are these things called muses. You heard of muses, right? And the muses would come and descend on you. You wouldn't have to call the muses.
Absolutely.
They have to choose to imbue you with ideas and creativity. And funnily enough, Genesis comes from a Greek word.
Okay.
Genesis comes from the word gignesthai, which means to be born or developed. And that's where I believe, you know, you're giving birth to your podcast here, right? You are developing an idea. And I've always wanted that platform for people to have that. But, you know, you don't even need a Genesis. You just need to have self-belief, confidence, and an understanding that you can start small and you can build it big.
Absolutely,
always.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's great. That's interesting.
Yeah, I really admire people who are like starting something because it is the biggest step, right?
Yeah, it is.
Like you know, when your podcast has 1 million followers and you're trying to get to 2 million, I'll be clapping like this. I'll be like, hell yeah, amazing. But right now, it's kind of like, hell yeah, this is the biggest step because you wouldn't be reaching the 1 million if you didn't just start in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? And it's scary.
It is scary, yeah. It's definitely been a journey, and like it's so interesting that so much happens in so little time also that I don't even have count, but I must have like this must be like 17 out of 21, and that's a big deal. And you know, like considering that we only sort of started or sort of this like what weeks back, and I think I'm also very you know, grateful with the opportunity of even being here, because you know, like it is in many ways a privilege to be able to be here and you know, interact with people, even the language that we're communicating in. And you know, like, and anybody who's listening to this, I mean, let's accept it. They do come from some sort of privilege because they have a smartphone where they're listening to it, and the Wi-Fi and all of that.
You're understanding English as well.
Exactly. And of course, like even for these topics to make sense to you, you have like a sort of background or context to.
True.
You get what I mean, right?
You have to have an understanding.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'd probably tune out by this point. And so, it just makes me wonder that, you know, like we do have enough. You know, like we already have enough. And it's so interesting where I'm living in Canggu. There's this guy, Russian guy. I don't even remember, very small town he comes from. And then I was just discussing with him. I was telling him that, you know, doing a new project and this podcast and all of that. And I gave him the whole story that, you know, I have, at this point, I'm starting from scratch. So that's the truth of it, that there is no money and, you know, and all of that. And he was like, well, I have income, but I don't have a home to go back to. And you know, that made me think, and it was so interesting because that was the day I recorded an episode on privilege. And then at that point, you know, like I didn't realize, because I was telling him that if nothing else works out, I can always, you know, take my bags, go to India, reset. That would be the proper reset. You know, this is still comfortable in a certain sense and living the good life, let's be honest.
So true.
So yeah, when he said that, I was like, fucking hell. This gives me all the more reason to, you know, put these messages out there. Let anybody who's being inspired by this be inspired, and, you know, as a community grow, because these are common experiences in a certain, you know, like way, shape, form. So I think there's beauty in that. There's beauty in sharing that with other people.
That's a strong word, I think. Like not overlooking the idea of sharing, because that's how we connect. We share experiences, we share whatever resources, and builds connection, builds relationships. And, you know, not the fact that now you are building a platform where you can take experiences and then share them with people is one way other people can. I always see it as like you're fast tracking people's ability to live lives, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, if you can start to imagine your life of not being able to go home, okay, changes your soul.
Yeah.
If you can suddenly listen to a story and appreciate, like just recently, I'm listening to Jay Shetty and
I was listening to that this morning.
and Lewis Hamilton.
No.
Okay. Because I watch F1 and I'm like, okay, maybe he goes a little bit deeper into his story and it's like, oh yeah, he did. He goes, he's a bit more casual and in depth about his life. Those experiences get you to understand him, but also get you to understand yourself, right? It's a dance of two stories, right? It's like, oh, I hear you, but how does it affect me? And like just you with your Russian friend, right? It shouldn't diminish your story. It shouldn't be like, oh, he doesn't have a go to. I shouldn't speak to him, or like I feel bad to speak to him. He's continuing on with his life, but it gives you all the more reason to do the thing that you're doing, which is super powerful.
And it's very interesting that you put it like that, because earlier, exactly what I was talking about in this episode about privilege is that for the longest time I used to feel guilty about my privilege. And there's this sort of narrative that, is this coming too easy for me, sort of, and that's the story I'm telling myself. But whereas when I just change my perspective around it and I'm like, okay, great, it's not my fault what I was born with, it's not anybody's fault what they were born with, but like, how can we use that to have a better future? And it's not just for me. This is not something, yes, of course, at some level, this is of great value to me, this podcast, that, it's something that I've created, but it's so somebody else can also create, and their version, they don't have to be a creator or whatever else, but then, taking that step and just going out there, not worrying so much. And,
I agree. I mean, look, I also have a privileged background, and I don't think that you have to acknowledge it. That's the first step, right? Otherwise, I feel like you're kind of aimlessly moving through life, not really understanding your background, and you don't really know where you stand with other people. And you could say ignorant things and do ignorant things, but if you're moving forward,
they've done that.
We've all done that, honestly. And that's why like everybody's now practicing gratitude and diving into the self-help market is so big now, and everybody is trying to understand who they are. And guilt is one of the biggest things, coupled with fear, that can stop you from doing things. It's like, oh, who am I to do this? And
somebody else taking care of it, sort of.
It's like the classic thing of like, you don't finish your food and oh, there's someone starving in Africa. It's like, well, I can't even get the food from here to Africa without it going bad. Oops, sorry, I'm spitting on the mic. But like, honestly, the whole idea that, it's contextual. Like, I can't. Okay, maybe if you said like feed the dog on the street, maybe that makes more sense. But like, there's, you can make yourself guilty. You can fabricate guilt. But you can also understand your situation, change your perspective of guilt, and turn it into more of a superpower. So actually, no, I'm doing this for a reason. I think maybe that's the element that people need in their lives, is a reason for doing something.
The why.
Yes, always.
The why.
And we all know Simon Sinek's stuff and studied it. Yeah, exactly.
Corporate.
Oh, yes. While his message is being repeated over and over again. Like, knowing your why is always important.
And it is true in so many ways. And there's something interesting that I wanted to say to something that you were previously saying, that another great thing that I got from my corporate experience was that, when you were saying that we struggle with perfectionism, my manager, and I'm so grateful for him, because, my only manager in life, and I had such a beautiful experience, because that whole team was like that. And he was like, listen, done is better than perfect. So, do it. And then because there's always this scope of better. And then I was having this conversation with my dad, who was sitting here, And then he said something interesting around that, and I'm still on that journey of, letting go of that perfectionism that comes with being an artist or creative of sorts.
Yeah.
And he was like, if you think you've done your best work, then there's no scope of improvement. And so it's fine, like, doing is far more important than getting it right, in a sense. So like doing this is important than, and I'm very happy, I hope it happens that we get to 1 million followers and 2 million eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, like if I focus on that, then again it sort of dilutes, and obviously there's the wishful side of it, that of course I'm happy for it to happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, just probably that. Okay, let's talk about something fun.
Go, please. To me, this has all been fun.
Okay. Like, you start.
Okay, well, when you're trying to turn your brain off, here's the thing. Creatives always are thinking of something, right? It's like, oh, I want to make this, I want to make that. It would be cool that if I lived, the fantasy is just going crazy, right? But how do you turn your brain off? Like, what do you do to stop? No, honestly, there's a ridiculous thing in there, isn't there? An answer, I'm guessing.
How do I? How did I is a thing of the past. And
okay, well, I want to know both then. How did you and how do you now?
How did I was illegal, so. so that, but like, yeah, I think for me, apart from that, and what was very important to me for my well-being was that ever since I moved to Paris, there was this thing that I had to, it was sort of a necessity, it still is, that every 6 weeks I was on the road.
Okay.
And so like, okay, and I don't think there's anything wrong or bad, because like, I was made to think like, why are you always traveling? And I was like, if I didn't do all of that, I wouldn't be the same person I am today. And for me, traveling does not have to be on a plane and like you go to another country and
it's
all.
Just moving.
Yeah, just moving. And for me, like, I go on hikes. I like to, it's just like an hour away by train, and like you can go into the forest and do that. And it sort of resets me, because I'm the sort of person that I think the self-awareness helps with that, that once I'm in the flow, like I told you, right, this has to go out now in this phase when I'm most energized about it, because that's the energy that will translate. And once, I'm done with this project, I know that, there'll be a breather where just taking 2 days off or 3 days off. So for me, traveling is definitely it.
Nice. Mixed with some illegals.
Sorry? I didn't say that. You did.
No. I coaxed it out of you.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like, I wish we could have that conversation in detail. But like,
well, maybe there'll be a time and place for that.
There will be a time for that. And yeah, like, I don't think, again, it's very breaking away from what's considered a break, and what works for you might not work for me, and vice versa. And
I think it could work for me as well.
See, peace pipe.
Exactly.
So yeah, like that's the honesty of it. And then from time to time, and especially being a creative, you know that sometimes, like just yesterday, I was struggling. I was like,
you were struggling.
No, like in the sense that I did one interview here, and then for the rest of the day I was so uninspired, and I just went back to my hotel room, and I was just like, rolling in bed, not doing any work per se. And then, like, I told myself that it's okay. Go find inspiration outside. I just took my bike, I rode around, I didn't use maps, so I was just driving around. And then I was sitting at the cafe and I took a call, and then I went back. I started editing the first episode by myself.
Nice.
And so, yeah, it's a process, and for everybody it's different. And a lot of times what I think is that people don't realize that, you need to figure out what works for you, and, take that break.
I mean, lately I've realized that I was watching a bit of Ali Abdaal stuff on YouTube, and he had one little YouTube short. And it said, "Are you a total worker?" Do you know what total worker is?
No.
It's someone who doesn't turn their brain off and is trying to optimize every moment of their life to feed into whatever other aspects.
Yeah.
So, for me, it was like describing my life at a certain point. I don't do it so much now. But I had to a point where I'd stopped listening to music and was only consuming podcasts or reading articles that would actually benefit my business side of life, or optimizing and getting things more out of every second and every minute. And it started, it takes a toll on you. You start to feel tired, and you start to feel like you're setting a bad standard for yourself. Right. And since watching that, I was like, oh my gosh, I actually have to do something else. How do I switch off? How do I live in Bali and I rarely go to the beach. Like, I started realizing these things. I'm like, oh my God, okay, let's just, you're privileged enough. It's free. It's there. Just go. Okay, so me and my wife, we would go check it out, sit, swim, enjoy it. But that's those moments of like deliberate mental voids is when you're allowing something to gush back in again, right? Which is why you go for a bike ride and be like, oh, that's kind of what I feel like doing now, right? And that is what I've learned more recently is let go of trying to control your minute by minute, and through the act of just having fun or clearing your schedule, something else always comes in, and it's always better.
I also do that. Like recently, what I've also found helpful is meditating, and it's not something I never thought I could do that, and then now it's even like even 5 minutes to sit and obviously I'm worrying, like no matter how much meta wisdom I try to talk about here, it is a part of life, and I have made peace with it, that there will be days, there will be moments where I can't help it, and that is the reality, the practicality of the situation. And in those moments I was like, what do I need to do right now is switch off. So how do I quickly do that in 5 minutes? Is that just sit down, just close your eyes and focus on your breathing, sort of a thing, even if it's for 5 minutes. And I've started playing and stuff again. Like this whole year, it's been since
playing what?
Here I play paddle.
Oh, you play paddle now.
So yeah, and like otherwise also in Paris we were playing badminton and squash and all of that. So I think that's a very healthy way of, because you asked me about the past and I was telling you about the future, that what would switching off be like, because when I'm into a physical activity, like even meditating is a physical activity of sorts. So then you have to be present to there and not worry about other things. So
I think when there's a degree of repetition and competitiveness, it's very good at wiping your memory short term, right? Of just being like, this is what you got to focus on. You can't be thinking about your project right now when you're literally 2 points down and you need to get this bloody point back, And one I think a few years ago when I was just before starting the place here, I was surfing a lot. Every weekend I'd be surfing like 4 or 5 hours, and those I found that time was bliss, because there's nothing more fearful than a giant fuck off wave coming at you, and you're like, do you swim that way or that way? And I'm still learning. I'm still I've been surfing for like a few years, but not as good as some of the Aussies out here, the locals. And, when you get caught out and you're just in the wrong area, your adrenaline just flushes into your body and you're like, I'm not proud of it, but there's some times where I see the wave and I'm just like, I just throw my board. I'm just like, fuck it. I'm just going to dive. That's it. That's all I can do. And it's fine. You just kind of like dive, tumble for a bit, pop up, pick the board up and go for it again. And, but like I said, those are the times where you literally you don't think about anything apart from survival, or you think it's just survival, right? Yeah.
At that point, your brain's literally like, is saving myself right now more important, or is that project that's on hold?
Exactly.
I'm like, wow.
It's automatic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your body is programmed to figure out what's best for itself. But that's also, it's a good practice of figuring out what your response is. Fight or flight. Wait, what's the third one? Fight, flight, or freeze. Yes. So.
I think I'm fight.
I'm frozen in fight. I want to do
I'm
it.
ready, but don't come.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, that's good.
it's something I miss, and I should get back into it.
Surfing or
fighting? Yeah,
fighting? Great,
I used to do
great.
karate actually.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. It was.
I learned taekwondo in school, but then
I
like
think
I don't
everybody
think.
needs to learn some kind of
Yeah,
self-defense. It's good discipline, right?
it's yeah.
Very
And
good discipline.
I think in brown cultures it wasn't so, like it wasn't a part of learning as such, and now it's becoming more. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah,
So
yeah. No, but I think that's an important thing to talk about is
yeah.
culture,
No, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
definitely, yeah.
cultures. I mean, back to the purpose of the podcast. Cultures set rules, and left, right, and center. Those rules, there are rules to break and there are rules to uphold, right? And that's the big moral question for all of us.
Name one. The one to break and the one you had to uphold.
Well, I mean, okay, I recently just got married.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you very much. I say recently, it was like September last year. Is that still recent? That's still recent, right?
Fairly recent,
yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, like, I feel that culture religion is imbued into culture, and there's always a bunch of rules from the past that can actually inhibit people's modern lives.
Right.
Things haven't kept up, and we basically allow the rules to enter into this modern world where it doesn't particularly work. Right.
Yeah. Are you religious?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
But I grew up as a Christian.
Okay.
And that's the one rule I had to break, which was to get married to my wife. I had to convert to Hinduism.
Oh, okay.
So I'm now Hindu, on paper.
Okay.
But I had, exactly.
Interesting.
And in Indonesia, I think maybe the rules have changed recently, but we just went with whatever rule was going on, which was you have to have the same religion to be married.
That's interesting.
But the one, navigating that legal bureaucracy was helped by my mother-in-law, which is great. Really, really grateful for that. But I had to navigate my parents' side, which they grew me. They brought me up as a Christian.
Yeah.
I had to really tell them and make them understand that through and through, I'm a Christian in my heart.
Yeah.
Right. This is how I grew up. This is what I believe in.
Right.
I love the lessons that we've learned as a family through this way. And it was hard for them to grapple that side of things. So really, really interesting. And to them, that was the rule that I broke. But, I told them, it's like, hey, you want us to be together, but, there are things that you have to kind of give up. And one of them is the fact that your son's going to continue being Christian. So I don't know that religion and cultures are mixed, some more loosely, but like that's one example that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that translates so heavily with like it's also personal experience, and even on a general note, like because coming from India, there's a certain kind of there's these unsaid rules, and as parents, so last year I came out to my parents as bisexual, and like I was in love with a woman, and I mean their response to
that's what I want to know. No, that's what I want to know. How did they respond?
And dude, I was blown.
Okay.
Honestly,
nice.
And I think that is my ultimate privilege, like because my mom, she was, of course, as parents, they want you to be happy, and whatever your decision is, I support it, but I think that's very much still under, within four walls sort of a thing, because there's also culture, society, religion in some cases. And then, so that was my mom there, and then my dad, and I've spoken about this in that conversation, it was such an emotional moment. He just looked at me for 2 seconds. I was shit scared, and because I don't know what's gonna come out. And then he just goes like, I don't give. No, he didn't.
I don't give a rat's.
No, he just said, I don't care about society or extended family.
Nice.
Like as a father, I'll always support you. And he dived into the practical bits that, okay, at that time it was like long distance. So either you move there or, she moves here. And I was
that
blown.
support.
I was blown. Yeah.
That's so good.
And that was like such a defining moment too. And everything else, like, I was like, okay, I come from this culture. This is embedded in me in him also to sort of go against this.
Yeah.
And the fact that I can see where I come from, like my genesis, to be able to, push me and go be your person, go say bye to the rules and sort of thing. Yeah. So I think in hindsight, that obviously paves the way, like, the journey becomes so much easier because my then partner did not have that privilege. And, and that's where the culture and, I'm not sure religion so much. It might have been because, we never really got into that conversation, but it was very cultural. And, like, it didn't matter if two people want to be together and, and like at some level, it's also so psychological that you also start believing it.
Yeah.
And that's difficult to break away from. And I think that in itself is so much we could probably do a season entirely on.
Probably, exactly. It's such a big topic, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think it determines a lot, like, how you live your life, what is available to you, what is considered okay.
Yeah.
And your happiness in a certain sense is sort of defined by cultural context, society, and where you come from.
Yes.
It's sad. And
yeah, I mean, first of all, that's amazing that their reaction was that your dad's just like, okay, so let's figure this out. Who cares if like, and that your mom, how did your mom react? She
was supportive in the sense that whatever makes you happy, but she was obviously concerned that, okay, my family, what am I gonna, like, I'm like, I don't give a fuck.
Well, that's the thing, like, I realizing that rules is a twofold reaction with it internally and externally, right? When you break it, you can break it for yourself, but it will emanate outwards, right? Especially absolutely, when it comes to culture. And to think about it, I think we were talking earlier about what kind of mindset you want to choose for these things, where what if, right?
Yeah.
And you won't know until you tell them. You won't know until, because yes, the path has probably been paved by other people, but no one's paved your path yet, right? There's no like determined path for you. That's how I believe. So until you make that decision and you react, they react to it and you react. Where does that branch go? Right? And that's awesome. It's great. It's an amazing step to make.
Going into the unknown.
Yeah.
But okay, well, George, this has been so lovely. I have loved every second of chatting with you.
Me too.
I'm very grateful for all your support, for everybody at Genesis. And I keep saying this because, like, words will honestly never be enough for the sort of gratitude I have to you and the team. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for helping me in my journey, and hope this makes somebody else's life more inspiring. Thank you. Like, share, subscribe.
You better subscribe.
See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.